container is getting embraced more and more. Earlier it was a lot on the test and development side. You're now seeing it getting embraced on the production side. This is what we saw with the VMs maybe 15 years back, 20 years back. That's exactly what's happening on the container side. And as the more and more enterprises embrace container, they need the infrastructure foundation where they can manage every component that goes in. So what the Spectrum Fusion is really doing is it is integrating the compute layer, the storage layer, and the network layer together, coupled with OpenShift and Kubernetes, as well as OCP virtualization that gives you a capability of even integrating VMs into the same stack. So it's like an appliance for container environments. If I as a bank were to go look at doing the plumbing across every component of these, right from compute to storage to the networking piece and putting it together, it is virtually a nightmare for the customer to really put all of them together in a seamless fashion. Now, this really puts all of this together in few simple steps. You are able to integrate a persistent storage appliance for a container environment. In India, you have seen a lot of customers embrace containers in a fairly big way. A lot of applications in the banking segment have started moving on to container environments. Sunil, for example, if you look at UPI, the universal payment interface has become very popular. It's been growing at an exponential rate in India, and that is now moving into a containerized environment. The digital engagement hub for all of these banks is getting the containerized way. Your trade finance is moving the containerized way. So there are a lot of applications where clients have taken the step in terms of moving their production environments for these applications onto container environments. So you are seeing a lot of clients in India who've taken that leap to a container environment. What has the pandemic done? I think the pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation adoption, and that has been the trend we've seen over the last 1.5 years. When I say digital transformation, two things come out very clearly from an India enterprise client's perspective. One is Sunil, the journey to the hybrid multi-cloud. And when I say hybrid multi-cloud, what I mean is, and if you look at every large customer in India, you will find him having presence across on-premise. He will have a small private cloud. He will have a presence, let's say, on AWS, some probably on IBM Cloud, on Azure. So presence across multiple cloud environments. Now, how do we have an environment or a platform that is able to communicate seamlessly across these environments is what the direction we've attempted to take with our clients. And that has been, and I'll give you examples. When the first phase of COVID started, we had scenarios where some of our large data center providers in Mumbai, there were 20 of their staff members who were COVID positive, and the client suddenly went into a panic mode. What would happen to me? And they needed solutions where we could have a DR on the public cloud, a replication relationship from his existing data center onto the public cloud with all the efficiencies exactly the way he has on his current existing environment onto a AWS or an IBM cloud kind of scenario. So those were kind of things that started happening, and while these were always on the desirable level earlier, people started accelerating on execution of this over the pandemic phase. So we saw fairly massive accelerated phase of deployment on this. The second lever, Sunil and Eric very beautifully alluded to this, is the adoption of AI. Now, adoption of AI, Sunil, from an India perspective, I would look at it into two broad areas. One is from a customer experience perspective. The second is from operational efficiencies. These were two predominant areas where we saw clients embrace AI. And I'll give you a few examples on how we saw this adoption. This is for a large general insurance company. It is a vehicle insurance company. What they deployed was a mobile application where I can, when I look at a vehicle damage. So if it's a Honda City, I take an image. When I take a image of the damaged part, I'm able to recognize that part as it appears in the parts catalog of the company. So if it's a left rear fender of the Honda City, it is able to pick it up as it appears in the parts catalog, get the associated label, then categorize into the level of damage, and then go throughout a assessment. And what the company did was they put up a campaign where they said all claims below a certain threshold, they will auto settle it then and there, credit the consumer, he can go settle it or get his work done in any workshop. They did not even want to go through the piece of an assessor coming in, a surveyor coming in, looking at it, all of that. So this was an AI model that we deployed for a general insurance company for vehicle damage assessment. Another example, and again, Eric spoke about this. This is for a telecom giant. What they do is they ingest call data records of a couple of 100 million customers. These are call data records that get ingested, converted into a Parquet format. Now, what I'm talking about is ingestion, which is at unprecedented level. We are talking of a couple of hundreds of millions of subscribers. We are talking of data capacities of almost a petabyte on a daily basis. Throughputs which are unprecedented. Now, this becomes the baseline of everything that they run, right from their campaign management, call drop analysis, their network strength across the country, their performance by circles, the works, everything that they run on their data analytics, this becomes the baseline. So everything that Eric spoke about in terms of really getting the customer the performance out of that box, he cannot function unless he gets that performance. You're talking of performance levels which are unprecedented. And that is true AI in action for some of these large enterprises. So these are a few examples how clients are embracing. Another beautiful example where we went live on a check validation for a large bank. So check truncation has been there in India, Sunil, for a while. This is check validation, which means the check image comes in from NPCI. That image is fed into the core banking, and you use a deep learning framework to do that. Post that, you do a date validation, you do a amount in words and figures validation. There was a Supreme Court ruling which said there can't be two inks, so you validate that. And of course, the signature validation. Now, this was all done on using two frameworks and a storage throughput, which was really required to match up to that level. This was using TensorFlow, open source frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch. We are able to do 2 lakh checks in 1.5 hours. This can even be a real-time scenario, but today it's not a technology limitation to move it to real-time, but the client wanted to do it in phases. They've right now done it in a batch manner. So these are live examples of how AI is coming mainstream. The third example around containers, like Eric said, containers is getting into mainstream very rapidly. There are multiple applications. I alluded to some of them initially, the likes of, especially in the financial segment, all your digital initiatives are moving to a container environment. Your government services are moving on to container environments. Your telcos are embracing a lot of container clouds to be able to get to the next phase. And of course, retail is also seeing a lot of adoption around containers. So these are a few examples of how India is embracing this change, Sunil. We have a technology called HyperSwap, where you have an automated failover between storage environments, so that if anything goes wrong, you have the other storage environment that takes over even without the user coming to know of it. And we saw many of our large enterprise customers now deploying this, because what they wanted was, if a problem comes in and if I don't have an expert on premise because of COVID scenarios or a pandemic, or their office becoming a containment zone, they wanted an automated backend system where even if there is a problem that comes in, I have a data availability that's absolutely intact. And we saw some of our top clients moving in their core applications, their top 5 critical applications onto something called as HyperSwap. Trade finance, core banking, we saw a whole lot of these critical applications or the core billing applications for telecom move on to something called as HyperSwap to ensure that data availability across the board.